I'm Corbett Wall with DV Auction, here with your feeder flash for Thursday, May the 28th. How long can it last? Admit it or not, this cattle market's pretty good for the way things are. We've been selling cattle here for $1.20 for the third week in a row now, and that's a predominant price this week. That is way better than we thought we would be at this point before the coronavirus started. We were at about 113 before we started seeing the effects of the coronavirus on the cattle market, knowing that we were going to be coming under severe pressure as we neared the summer months with the big heavy supplies of market-ready cattle. But here we are at 120, and I realize it's because your packers are trying to save face and put a good foot forward here as they're undergoing investigation and things like that. And I realize that we haven't gotten to see a fair percentage of your retail beef price as your packers were gouging consumers and still gouging them, but not as severe as it was a few weeks ago during this crisis here. But you know, things are pretty darn good here, and they're continuing to hold it up, selling a lot of negotiated cash cattle. Of course, your formula guys are suffering as they see their show lists not being moved, and they get cattle being held back, and they're holding on to cattle, some of them as many as 2 months that should have been scheduled in. They're getting enormous, and they're getting into a big problem there because these formula cattle, with all the different aspects of the formula, are causing those cattle to come back costing way more than what they can buy these negotiated cattle at, even though the negotiated price is higher than what fundamentals really say that they should be. Our feeder cattle price is about $10 higher than it was when your coronavirus started, and even though we'd always like to have more, it's not awful bad. Now your calf price, we did not see the full market potential out of your calves because we didn't see the green grass fever that usually comes on in March and April because of coronavirus and things like that. But you know, all in all, things are pretty darn good. You know, our June live cattle, our spot live cattle futures are less than 101, and we're selling cattle at 120. Of course, they didn't converge on the last spot market month here. We're thinking that they should converge this time. If they do, then your June live cattle have a long way to go here in just a few weeks. But I don't know how long this deal can last. Even though we're selling some negotiated cattle, most of them are out of your smaller lots, your individual producers, your farmer feeder lots, some of your smaller lower quality type lots is where you're seeing a lot of cattle moving. But your big corporate feeders are continuing to back up and back up and back up. And you can see it, especially down here in the southern plains when you're traveling around. There's cattle still out on graze out wheat. They've been out of something to eat here for a couple of weeks now, and they just continue to rummage around out there with none to eat. The reason that they're still out there, those cattle were to be moved into some of these feedlots, and there's just no empty pens. And those smaller lots and selling those cattle, or the packers coming in buying those negotiated cattle out of those smaller lots that have available cash cattle to sell, can only last so long. We saw a bigger negotiated movement, both negotiated cash and negotiated grid last week than we saw formula. That's the first time we've seen that for a long time until we got into this corona deal here. But I tell you what, as we continue to back these cattle up, eventually it's going to catch up with us. Box beef cutout values continue to decline, and the packers are not going to be so gracious at some point. They're going to figure that they've showed good faith long enough for the investigators, and they're going to start wanting to back those cattle up. And remember, we were going to have a lot of these market-ready negotiated cattle or market-ready cattle hitting the show list, whether this coronavirus still hit or not, whether your plants were backed up and were slowed down or not. And now we've got all these cattle that have been pushed back, and it can only last so long. Our board's been up all week. Not sure what your investors are looking at there, because we've got a world of cattle out there that are getting backed up. Well over 1 million head of fat cattle that are being backed up. We're going to have to crank this slaughter up We may get close to 600,000 this week, but we need 640, 650,000 to even start catching up. And with well over 1 million head of cattle being put back, it's going to take the bulk of the rest of this year and probably into 2021 before we truly catch up. So how long can this deal last? It's unclear. But you guys need to be enjoying the ride, and even though you're going in there with your hat in your hand, getting some of these cheese checks from this coronavirus food assistance program that at your FSA office, and you're getting some free money there, you know, it's kind of tongue-in-cheek, because you know that things are actually better than what you thought they were going to be. Yes, for those of you that sold cattle in mid-March there through the first part of April, yeah, you got hit pretty hard, but it's bounced right back, and it's better than it really has a right to be. Let's look at the board for Wednesday. June live cattle futures were up $1.40 at $100.80. Here we are, the last week of May, moving into June. Our fat cattle market is $1.20, and we're under $1.01 here on your spot market. It's got to converge if the futures market is working. August live cattle futures up $1.47 at $100.72. You go on out from there, and it was up a dime to up $1.22. August feeder cattle up 72 cents at 134.02. September up 65 at 135.07. You go out in your out front months on your feeder cattle, up 55 to up 75. Your fat cattle trade has been largely steady here with last week. We still got a big wide price range, but for the most part, 120 is the market. On Wednesday, we saw negotiated confirmed sales in Iowa, 8,700 head. Live sales range from 111 to 119. Dress sales 174 to 190. Nebraska about 8,000 head from 115 to 120, and dress sales from 178 to 190. Kansas about 1,900 head, 115 to mostly 120, and a few 190 up in the north part of the state. Texas about 500 head, and the Southern Plains needs to sell a lot more cattle this week, and it'll likely happen here today and Friday, but all at 120. Box beef cutout values continue to fade back. Choice cuts 377.77 down 772 for Wednesday's trade. Selects 350.20 down 982. Pretty good movement again. I tell you what, we've been having big movement here as we're still seeing a little bit of panic buying, and these retail outlets continue to want to keep their shelves full for their customers there. And now we're starting to get more and more of this food service as our restaurants are starting to open, and it's grilling season too. But 175 loads of cuts, grinds, and trimmings. Your slaughter, it doesn't do much good to look back or for the week, because we had a holiday this week, but for the day on Wednesday, 110,000. That's kind of a benchmark. That's a good thing here. We had a struggle to get over 100. Now we're up to 110,000 for Wednesday. That's 9,000 more than a week ago. Just 12,000 less than the same day a year ago. Let's look at your feeder cattle market. Your real-time index on DV auction laid on Wednesday sitting at 128.74 based on an 800-pound steer up through your middle 12 states. That was up $1.69 here, and it's all due to your futures markets being supportive here so far this week. But you look at your big markets so far. OKC West, 7,100 head there. Feeders were $2 to $6 higher. Calves not well tested. Winter livestock, Dodge City, Kansas, 2,200 head. Feeder steers there steady to $3 higher. Your heavier weights weighing over 850 on the steers and over 800 on the heifers, steady to $3 lower. That didn't really jive with what went on at El Reno, because those in El Reno, your heaviest cattle actually sold the best. But in Dodge City, they didn't. Your heaviest feeder cattle were a little bit off there. But calves not well tested. But we'll see what happens as it goes on here through the week. But that's your feeder flash for Thursday.